I am back with more books, and this time, as I promised, these are the 5 books that I enjoyed most reading in 2016. I've read, I think, 31 books, and I picked out 5. It wasn't really hard. Yeah, I looked through the list of the books that I read and I was just like, yeah, these 5 were just the most impactful or enjoyable for me. Not all of these were published this year, but definitely I read them for the first time this year. The first favourite I read in the first month of the year, so that was like shebang, I was on it, and that is Death or Ice Cream by Gareth P. Jones. I read this purely because I was like stocking the shelves. I saw the cover, I read the title, and I was like, this is a book that I need to read. Or really, I wanted to recommend it to people, and then I realized I might want to know what it's about. It's actually kind of a short story collection. It nearly fell. A short story collection. All of the short stories are actually linked in some way or another, but you don't realize the link until sometimes quite late into the book. So at a certain point you're like, hey, that story at the beginning, like, totally is linked to this. Slowly, very slowly, this bigger picture starts to show, but they're all set in a town called Larkin Mills, where the strangest stuff happens. The title is quite fitting. Death is definitely very present. It's sort of in that middle. It's written good enough for kids, but it's definitely dark. But this is so amazing. I was laughing, I was thinking, I was impressed. I read this so quickly and so happily, and it made me feel so good. Really, really, really recommend everyone reads this, because this was so good. My next favorite I read in February. So once again, starting the year off good when it comes to books. I don't have a copy of this because I read it as an audiobook, which was a good choice, but also I really regret not having a physical copy, and I really want to read the physical book as well. And it's Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. Everyone knows about this book. This has been all the rage for years now. I only just read it this year, and wow. I still very often think about this book because it's so mind-blowing. Basically, a new flu-like virus breaks out that starts off quite innocent and then just kills within a few days, and this spreads like wildfire. Basically everyone gets sick and then everyone dies in a very short span of time, except for a few people who they are immune. It jumps in time, like before this happened, during that this happened, and after this happened. There are some scenes in this I regularly think about. I should reread it because I don't really remember the details, but I remember these feelings that I had. Also, maybe recommended, maybe not. I read this in February. Lots of people get ill in February, and I read it as an audiobook, so I could read it on the go, but I could, like, while I was listening to this story about people getting ill, everyone around me was like coughing or sniffling, and it was terrifying, but it really added to it. And yeah, if for some reason you're like me and you haven't read this yet, please do, and then talk to me about it. Like, let's just go over every profound scene and talk about it. After that, March comes around and I read a book that I think I've talked about on YouTube before, and it's The Dream Snatcher by Abby Elphinstone, who I have to say, first of all, this book is amazing partially because Abby Elphinstone is amazing. She does some serious research for her books. She goes traveling, adventuring, she has some amazing experiences, and then somehow mixes them into such a great book. So this is the first in a series. The second one is out already, and I think the third is coming out in February. And it's about Mole, who is a gypsy girl, and she has a sort of wild cat friend called Griff, and For some reason, she is swept up in this great mystery, and it gets quite adventurous and definitely very amazing. The characters in this are great, the story in this is great. It is so well written, and you can really tell that Abby Elphinstone, we're not on first name basis, that Abby Elphinstone has been out there in the world doing some of the things she describes, talking to people. This is really good, and while I was reading this really made me feel the way the first few Harry Potters made me feel. Mole is a great character. I hope it's pronounced Mole and not like some really different pronunciation. The shot probably moved because the battery died again, and it's gonna die again, so moving on. After March, I read the next favourite in July, and I think this will be on many people's favourite list, and that is The Lie Tree by Frances Hardinger. This is about a girl called Faith whose father is a reverend, and he joins some sort of scientific expedition to a very remote island with a very small community of very strange people. This is set in sort of Victorian times, and Faith is a girl, and she's supposed to behave like a good girl and not show any interest in science or other man's business, and not, yeah, she's just supposed to wear the dresses and not say anything. But Faith doesn't really care for female things, and she just wants to do science. And her father mysteriously dies. Yes, lots of things are very shady, and Faith is like, realize nobody wants me to do this, but I am gonna go and figure this all out. It started off very slow, but then the suspense starts growing. The story is amazing, the writing is amazing. I mean, if you're into slow reads, this is really for you. It's not that slow, but Frances Hardinger, your head contains some amazing stuff. And then my fifth favourite I read in July as well. In the last video, I talked about another book in this series. I read the first and the second and the third this year. I chose the second, which is Arsenic Fruity by Robin Stevens, as my favourite because the first, while it is good, Murder Most Unladylike that is, definitely is then overshadowed by this. And then the third is really, really, really good. But I so loved what happened in this that I kept thinking about the second while I was reading the third. So that's why I think the second so far, because there are two more that I haven't read and there will be more, is my favourite. In this one, Daisy and Hazel go to Daisy's house for Easter break, and Daisy's brother has a friend over, her parents are there, they have servants, and basically Hazel is from Hong Kong, but she lives in England at a boarding school, and she's going to Daisy's house, and Daisy is very English. So Hazel is experiencing all these very English things, and maybe it's different if you're English, but I'm not English. So lots of these things, you know, Hazel finds impressive or new, and I also found them impressive and new, so that was great. And the dynamic in this one between the girls and all the other characters is just great, and the murder mystery is actually really cool. There are some very shady characters, and all of it was wonderful. Really recommend you read this series. Hopefully, I've talked to my friend Afia, who I'll link below, about making a video together about this series. I really want to talk more about this because there's a lot to say. Anyway, those are my 5 favourite books that I read this year. Please let me know your top whatever 5 or more or less. I hope you had a great Christmas. I hope you will have a great new year, and all the best to you.